There is a repair system inside your body that most people over 50 have basically forgotten about. It doesn't require surgery, it doesn't require medication. It's already built into you. It was running beautifully when you were 30, and the reason it isn't running well anymore has very little to do with your age and almost everything to do with what you've been feeding it, or more accurately, what you haven't been feeding it. I'm talking about your stem cells. And I know that phrase makes people think of expensive clinics or experimental treatments or something that only matters if you're already sick. But stem cells aren't exotic. They're working inside you right now. They're in your bone marrow, producing the repair cells your cardiovascular system depends on. They're in the lining of your gut, rebuilding a surface that replaces itself every 5 days. They're in your brain, sitting quietly in the hippocampus, still capable of making new neurons well into old age. Their job is to replace what breaks, patch what's damaged, and keep you functioning. And after 50, they slow down. Not because they're gone, not because they've died off, but because the signals have gotten weak, the fuel has gotten scarce, and the environment they're working in has become so cluttered with cellular damage that they can barely do their jobs anymore. The remarkable thing, and this is what I want this video to be about, is that published research has now identified specific ordinary foods that directly reverse each of those problems. Not in theory, in measured, documented studies, and most seniors eat none of them on a regular basis. 5 foods, 5 completely different mechanisms, and together they address virtually every reason your stem cells are underperforming right now. I want to walk you through each one and explain exactly what it does, how it works, and how much you need. Let's start in the brain, because that's where the decline worries people the most and where the evidence is strongest. You have a small population of neural stem cells living in your hippocampus, the region of your brain responsible for memory and learning. These cells produce new neurons throughout your entire life. Scientists confirmed this decades ago, and the research has only gotten stronger since. The problem is that after 50, this production line slows down dramatically. Fewer new neurons means less cognitive flexibility, slower recall, and that gradual fogging of mental sharpness that people write off as just getting older. Blueberries directly reverse this decline, and the evidence for it now spans animal studies, cell studies, and human neural tissue research. At the USDA Human Nutrition Research Center at Tufts University, researchers tested what blueberry extract does to adult human hippocampal neural progenitor cells, the precursor cells that become new neurons. These are human cells, not animal cells, and that distinction matters. They found that blueberry extracts significantly increased both the survival rate and the proliferation rate of those progenitor cells. More cells survived, more cells divided, and when the researchers introduced an oxidative stressor to simulate what aging actually does to brain tissue, the blueberry extract reversed the damage and brought proliferation back toward normal levels. The mechanism behind this centers on a class of compounds called anthocyanins, the pigments that give blueberries their deep blue color. These compounds cross the blood-brain barrier, which most dietary antioxidants cannot do, and once inside the brain, they reduce the oxidative stress and inflammation that suppress stem cell activity. They're not just protecting existing neurons, they're reactivating the system that builds new ones. What makes blueberries particularly powerful is that they work on multiple fronts simultaneously. They lower oxidative stress in the tissue surrounding the stem cells, which removes one of the main barriers to proliferation. They reduce neuroinflammation, which is another suppressor, and they appear to directly stimulate the progenitor cells themselves, increasing their willingness to divide and mature into functional neurons. A cup of blueberries a day, fresh or frozen, is the dose most commonly used in the research. Frozen blueberries are picked at peak ripeness and flash frozen, which actually preserves the anthocyanin content better than fresh berries that have been sitting on a shelf for days losing potency. A bag of frozen wild blueberries at any grocery store costs $3 to $4 and lasts a week. Put them in oatmeal, blend them into a smoothie, or just eat them straight out of a bowl. Your brain's stem cells are waiting for exactly what's inside them. Now, blueberries clear the environment around your brain's stem cells so they can start working again. But there's a separate question that scientists have been trying to answer for decades, and they only cracked it recently. What is the actual signal that tells a dormant neural stem cell to wake up and start dividing? What is the molecular trigger? In 2022, researchers at Baylor College of Medicine and the Duncan Neurological Research Institute at Texas Children's Hospital published a study that answered that question, and the answer turned out to be something so simple that it almost defied belief. There is a protein inside neural stem cells called TLX. It's been called the master regulator of neurogenesis because it controls whether stem cells in the hippocampus self-renew and produce new neurons or remain dormant. Scientists had known about TLX for years, but it was classified as an orphan receptor, meaning nobody knew what activated it. Without knowing the trigger, they couldn't use it therapeutically. It was like knowing the lock existed but having no key. The Baylor team found the key. It's oleic acid, a simple monounsaturated fatty acid, the most abundant fatty acid in extra virgin olive oil. They demonstrated that oleic acid binds directly to TLX and converts it from a transcriptional repressor, a molecule that keeps genes turned off, into a transcriptional activator that switches on the genes responsible for cell division and neurogenesis. When they treated neural stem cells with oleic acid, proliferation increased. When they tested it in live mice, both young and old, hippocampal neurogenesis increased measurably. The master switch for new brain cell production was being flipped by a fatty acid that people around the Mediterranean had been consuming daily for thousands of years. Now, the researchers were careful to note that dietary oleic acid from olive oil may not reach the brain in high enough concentrations to directly activate TLX the way a targeted dose would. The brain produces its own oleic acid internally for this purpose. But here's what the broader research on olive oil shows, and it's just as striking. A clinical trial at Auburn University took 25 people with mild cognitive impairment and gave half of them 3 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil daily for 6 months. At the end of the study, the EVOO group showed significant improvement in clinical dementia ratings and behavioral scores. Their blood-brain barrier function improved measurably on MRI imaging, and their blood levels of amyloid beta, the toxic protein that accumulates in Alzheimer's disease, decreased. A separate meta-analysis published in 2026 pooled data from 5 clinical trials involving 747 participants and found a statistically significant improvement in global cognitive function scores with EVOO consumption. The polyphenols in extra virgin olive oil, particularly oleocanthal and hydroxypterosyl, provide neuroprotection, reduce neuroinflammation, enhance the clearance of toxic proteins from the brain, and support the blood-brain barrier that keeps damaging substances out. And the oleic acid provides the raw material that your brain's own stem cells may use internally to keep the neurogenesis switch turned on. 2 to 3 tablespoons a day drizzled on salad, vegetables, or bread. Use it cold or at low heat because high heat degrades the polyphenols. A good bottle of extra virgin olive oil costs $8 to $12 and lasts 2 to 3 weeks. That's less than 50 cents a day for the most comprehensively studied brain protective food in the scientific literature. So now your brain's stem cells are getting cleared of oxidative interference from the blueberries and receiving both structural support and neuroprotective compounds from the olive oil. But stem cells don't only live in your brain, they're distributed throughout your entire body, in your bone marrow, in your gut lining, in your blood vessels, in your skin, in your muscles. And every one of those stem cell populations faces the same fundamental threat as it ages, a gradual body-wide accumulation of oxidative damage and toxic byproducts that your cells can no longer clean up efficiently. Your body has a built-in defense system for this. It's controlled by a protein called NRF2, which scientists call the master regulator of your cellular defense response. When NRF2 is activated, it switches on more than 50 protective genes at once, genes that neutralize free radicals, detoxify harmful chemicals, repair DNA damage, and clear out cellular debris. It's essentially the command center for your body's internal cleanup crew. When NRF2 is active, your stem cells operate in a cleaner, healthier environment. When NRF2 is suppressed, which happens increasingly with age, the damage accumulates and your stem cells suffer. The most potent natural activator of NRF2 ever identified is sulforaphane. And the richest food source of sulforaphane is broccoli sprouts. Not broccoli. Broccoli sprouts, the tiny 3-day-old seedlings that look like alfalfa sprouts and taste mildly peppery. Broccoli sprouts contain anywhere from 10 to 100 times more sulforaphane precursor than mature broccoli heads, depending on the variety and growing conditions. The difference is enormous. What makes sulforaphane unusual among dietary compounds is its bioavailability. Most plant-based antioxidants have poor absorption, which is why you hear so much about compounds that work in a test tube but don't do much in the body. Sulforaphane is different. It's a small lipophilic molecule that absorbs rapidly and reaches meaningful concentrations in tissues throughout the body, including the brain. Peer-reviewed research has documented its ability to protect neural stem cells specifically, reducing the oxidative and inflammatory signals that cause those cells to shut down. A study evaluating sulforaphane's neuroprotective effects confirmed that it protects neural stem cells through NRF2 activation while simultaneously suppressing inflammatory mediators that damage the surrounding tissue. And the protection doesn't stop at the brain. NRF2 activation improves the environment around stem cells in your gut, your bone marrow, and your blood vessels. It's a systemic upgrade to the conditions in which every stem cell population in your body operates. The cleaner the environment, the better the stem cells function. It's that straightforward. You can buy broccoli sprouts at many grocery stores or grow them at home in a mason jar in about 3 days for pennies. A small handful on a sandwich, in a salad, or blended into a smoothie is a meaningful dose. One important detail, you need to chew them thoroughly or chop them before eating because sulforaphane is produced when an enzyme called myrosinase interacts with its precursor compound, and that reaction requires the plant cells to be broken open. If you swallow the sprouts whole, you miss most of the benefit. Chew them. That's the activation step. Now let's move from the brain to the bloodstream because there's a type of stem cell that most people have never heard of, and it may be the most important one for seniors to understand. Circulating in your blood right now are cells called endothelial progenitor cells. They're produced in your bone marrow and released into your bloodstream, and their job is to find damaged spots in the lining of your blood vessels and repair them. Think of them as a roaming maintenance crew for your entire cardiovascular system. Every time your blood pressure spikes, every time stress hormones surge, every time oxidative damage scuffs the inner wall of an artery, these cells show up and patch the damage. When they're plentiful and active, your blood vessels stay flexible, your circulation stays strong, and your heart doesn't have to work as hard. When their numbers decline, which happens steadily after 50, the damage accumulates faster than it gets repaired. That imbalance is one of the central drivers of cardiovascular disease and aging. The cells that make up your blood vessel lining and the progenitor cells that repair them are built from fatty acid membranes, and the most important fatty acid for those membranes is DHA, docosahexaenoic acid, a long-chain omega-3 that your body cannot make efficiently on its own. DHA is also the primary structural fat in your brain, making up a large percentage of the fatty acids in your neural membranes. It is quite literally the building material for both your brain and your cardiovascular repair system at the same time. Sardines are one of the most concentrated food sources of preformed DHA on Earth. Unlike plant-based omega-3 sources, which give you the precursor ALA that your body then has to convert into DHA at a very low rate of roughly 5 to 10%, sardines deliver DHA directly. No conversion needed. Your body absorbs it and puts it to work immediately. A single 3.75 ounce tin of sardines, the small can you can buy at any grocery store, contains roughly 740 milligrams of combined EPA and DHA. That alone covers or exceeds most expert recommendations for daily omega-3 intake. And sardines have advantages that go beyond their omega-3 content. They're one of the cleanest fish you can eat because they sit at the bottom of the food chain, which means they don't accumulate the mercury and heavy metals that larger fish like tuna and swordfish do. They're also rich in selenium, vitamin D, and B12, all of which support immune function and cellular repair. A can of sardines costs between $2 and $4, requires no cooking, and can be eaten on crackers mixed into salad or added to pasta. For the amount of DHA, protein, and micronutrients you get per dollar, there is almost nothing in the grocery store that competes. If you want your bone marrow producing healthy repair cells, and you want those cells built from the right material, sardines are the most efficient delivery system available. And now the final piece, and this one works differently from everything else on this list, the blueberries clear the environment. The olive oil activates the neurogenesis switch. The broccoli sprouts turn on systemic cellular defense. The sardines provide the building material for new cells. But none of that matters as much as it should if your stem cell's own internal power supply is broken. And after 50, for most people, it is. Every cell in your body, including every stem cell, runs on mitochondria. These are the tiny structures inside your cells that produce the energy required for everything the cell does: dividing, repairing, signaling, surviving. A single cell can contain hundreds or even thousands of mitochondria, and when they're healthy, the cell works well. The problem is that mitochondria accumulate damage over time. They become less efficient, they start producing more waste, and the process your body uses to clear out damaged mitochondria and replace them with functional ones, a process called mitophagy, slows down significantly with age. So your stem cells end up running on broken power plants, and broken power plants produce less energy and more toxic byproducts. A stem cell with damaged mitochondria can't divide properly, can't repair tissue effectively, and can't do the job it was designed to do. It's not dead, it's just crippled. In 2016, a team at the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology published a study in Nature Medicine that identified a molecule capable of restarting mitophagy, the cleanup process that removes damaged mitochondria and makes room for healthy ones. That molecule is urolithin A, and your body makes it from compounds found in pomegranate, and here's how it works. Pomegranates are one of the richest food sources of L-agitannins, a class of polyphenols. When you eat pomegranate, those L-agitannins are broken down in your stomach into L-agic acid, which is then converted by bacteria in your gut into urolithin A. And urolithin A does something that no other known naturally occurring molecule does. It specifically reactivates mitophagy. It tells your cells to identify the broken mitochondria, disassemble them, and recycle the components into new functional ones. The Swiss researchers described it as the only known natural compound capable of relaunching mitochondrial cleanup. When they tested it in aging animals, it didn't just improve mitochondrial function. It extended lifespan by over 45% in the worm model and improved exercise capacity and muscle function in aging mice. Then in 2025, researchers in Germany published evidence that urolithin A rejuvenates T cells, a critical component of the immune system, by restoring mitochondrial health within those cells. The mechanism was the same, mitophagy activation that cleared damaged mitochondria and allowed the cells to function like younger versions of themselves. The implications for stem cells specifically are profound because stem cells are among the most energy-dependent cells in your body. They need functional mitochondria to divide, and if those mitochondria are damaged, division fails or produces defective cells. Now, there is an important caveat. Not everyone's gut bacteria produce urolithin A efficiently. Roughly 40% of people lack the specific microbial populations required for the conversion. But eating pomegranate regularly promotes the growth of those bacteria over time, gradually improving your body's ability to produce the compound. The L-agitannins in pomegranate also provide substantial antioxidant and anti-inflammatory benefits independent of urolithin A, so even before the conversion pathway is fully established, you're still benefiting. Half a pomegranate a day or a glass of pure pomegranate juice with no added sugar is a meaningful dose. A single pomegranate costs $2 to $3 and lasts 2 to 3 servings. Pure pomegranate juice runs about $5 to $6 for a bottle that covers 4 to 5 days. Either way, you're supplying your gut with the raw material it needs to produce the only known natural compound capable of restarting the mitochondrial cleanup process that your stem cells depend on to function. And what strikes me about this list is that none of these foods duplicate each other. They're not 5 versions of the same benefit. Each one addresses a different failure point in the system that keeps your stem cells working. The blueberries clear the oxidative and inflammatory damage that suppresses stem cell activity in the brain, reopening the door for those cells to proliferate. The extra virgin olive oil provides the fatty acid that activates the master neurogenesis switch while simultaneously protecting the blood-brain barrier and clearing toxic proteins from brain tissue. The broccoli sprouts activate NRF2, the body-wide defense system that improves the operating environment for every stem cell population you have, from your bone marrow to your gut to your brain. The sardines deliver the preformed DHA that your progenitor cells and neurons are physically built from, providing the structural material that no amount of signaling or cleanup can replace. And the pomegranate supplies the raw material your gut needs to produce urolithin A, the compound that restarts the mitochondrial cleanup process your stem cells depend on for the energy to divide. Environment, signal, defense, material, power. 5 bottlenecks, 5 foods, each one under a few dollars, all of them available at any grocery store. Together, they're addressing the system from every direction at once. I want to close with honesty because I think that matters more than enthusiasm. And this is not a miracle. These 5 foods are not going to reverse a decade of decline overnight. They're not going to replace medication that your doctor has prescribed, and they are not going to cure a disease that has already taken hold. If someone promises you that from a grocery list, they're selling you something. But what the research says, and it says it more clearly every year, is that your stem cells are still in there. They're in your bone marrow, in your gut, in the walls of your blood vessels, in your hippocampus. They haven't quit. The pathways that activate them still function. What's been going wrong is that the signals weakened, the building materials ran low, the cellular environment filled up with damage, the defense systems powered down, and the mitochondria broke. Every food on this list fixes one of those problems. Together, they fix all of them. Less than $5 a day, less than most people spend at a drive-through, and the published science says it can meaningfully change how well the repair system you were born with continues to work for the rest of your life. Your stem cells haven't given up on you. Give them something to work with. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.